This episode of Go Be Wyoming is brought to you by Fly Sheridan. Save time, fly local, fly Sheridan. And welcome back in, Wyoming knuckleheads, to another episode of GoBeWYO. I'm your host, Aaron Gray. I've got Carter in studio being my little Jamie, I guess, helping me with the board, getting the camera set up. And today's guests, we've got 4 guests, 3 in studio, 1 over Google Meets. I'm super excited about this. This is going to be a women's entrepreneur panel. So all women business owners. We will start with introducing Antonia over Google Meets. She is the owner of Bonafide Foods. She is currently in Round Top, Texas at a little retreat for junk gypsies, I believe. So she's going to be over the computer there through the board, and then we'll go counterclockwise. We've got Krista of Thistle and Tulle Photography, and then to her right is Kendrick of Trailhead Marketing, and then Laura of Peak Consulting, who's also in the same building here in Market Hall. So first time ever meeting you, Laura, but this is great. I'm super excited to do this. Megan, I'm happy that you wanted to get this together because as we were talking about, you picked me up from this morning because I've having some car troubles, but I've always wanted to get some business women in here and talk about being a woman, running a business in Wyoming. So I'm super excited to have all 4 of you in here.
Yep. So I actually reached out to Aaron, starting the podcast. I wanted to talk with, I know a lot of lady entrepreneurs. You all are just a handful of them, and we could go on with the list here in Sheridan. But I know it's a different experience, and I know we all have stories. We were just talking about it, and we had to cork our stories so we could save it. But so I reached out to Aaron so we could all start talking about our individual businesses and what we're doing and the experience of being a female entrepreneur in Wyoming.
Love it. So what we'll do first, and then I just kind of want you 4 to talk, is we will let you each have kind of your soapbox moment, sales pitch a little bit, not really sales pitch, but kind of the start of the business. Why did you start the business? Where it's gone. And then that way each of you kind of get your little minute, and then we can kind of go from there. So let's start with Antonia, and then we'll go through the studio here. Antonia, why did you start Bonafide Foods? And maybe talk about how you got out to Wyoming. I do remember that one from our first time.
So people who know me, people who don't know me, I have a long and storied history in food service. I was the nation's youngest executive master pastry chef at 19 years old. I'm a 3rd generation restaurateur and caterer. So food service has always been a core part of my life. I found myself in Wyoming, especially Sheridan, in service, private service to a family out at Cato Ranch. And after a little while, I just realized that that really wasn't my path anymore. And my amazing husband, Brian, the other side of Bonafide Food Love, had been following me in my career path where we had been going for that first 6 years of our marriage. And I said to him, "Hey, Brian, what do you want to do, babe? We could do anything." I was all for crew a yacht in the Caribbean, but Brian had been watching too much Food Network television while we lived on a mountain outside of Jackson Hole, and he decided he wanted to open a food truck. And so I don't know how to do anything halfway or even a little, so we went all out and started Bonafide, which of course just was local to Sheridan with our little food truck on the street. And within the first year, we had some exponential growth, some tremendous support from our community. Catering is actually our specialty and what I truly enjoy. And these days where the profit is at, and these last 6 years, it has just grown and grown from this little tiny commissary kitchen to a community commissary that is currently being utilized by 6 different small scale producers in Sheridan and our community. We also help support and mentor other mobile vendors. Cater, of course, if you live in the Sheridan area and you are going to a VIP event, probably Bonafide will be your caterer. And it's just given us a lot of joy. Of course, it's a tremendous amount of work. We've won a couple of Food Network awards in the last couple of years. We go to Sturgis every summer, and that is like the pinnacle of business. And in the last couple of years, we have been combining Bonafide, along with one of my other interests, which is Ride Wild, and that is women's moto empower sports. And Bonafide Food Love helps host their events nationwide. We set up housing, food service, activities. In my role as Eagle Medicine Woman, I promote sisterhood and tribe and really just self-empowerment. So all kinds of fun things about what Bonafide is. Some people have noticed that we haven't been on the street this summer season. COVID, unfortunately, really affected the profitability and the ability to employ people for daily street service. And so we see ourselves continually evolving. And, Bonafide really is a brand in itself, and it means to be real and genuine. And there's some really exciting things on the horizon for Bonafide and myself. So we'll get more into that as we go along.
Yes, we will. That was well said. So we'll go to Krista now. So Thistle and Tulle, and we were having this conversation before my dyslexia kicked in. So Thistle and Tulle, spell the Tulle because you do a lot of wedding and eloping photography, correct?
Yeah, so Tulle is Tulle, which is like the fabric on dresses. And I always have to explain that to people, but it sticks in their head then. So I was going to change the name, but I kept it the whole time. So my business, photography, I do adventure elopements and weddings. So I travel all over the country, based here in Sheridan. I went to college for photography. I'm from Pennsylvania originally, so I went to Philly at Temple University, graduated with a double major in painting and photography, and then I worked in fashion actually for a while. So I interned for Polo, Ralph Lauren in New York City and Manhattan. And then my goal was to work for Vogue one day, but I decided I didn't quite fit in with those people. So then I worked for Lord & Taylor. I was like a lead photographer there right out of college. And like I said, didn't fit in, did a road trip with one of my best friends, never been out west before, decided I loved it and went back, quit my job. And I basically moved out to Yellowstone National Park and lived there for 6 months first, just working in a hotel, didn't know what I was going to do with my life, still taking photos here and there, and then discovered Big Sky, Montana. Fell in love with Big Sky, and then through that whole journey, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So I just had surgery, and I had to get cancer treatment in between all of that. So after Yellowstone, I moved back east to do the cancer treatment for a month, and then I moved right back to Big Sky out there. Then I became a ski photographer, so I snowboarded with my camera all over the mountain, met my boyfriend at Big Sky, moved down.
Shout out to Spencer.
Yeah, Spencer. Wax on wheels. And then moved down to Sheridan with him, and then just kind of, I didn't know what I was doing again. And someone just told me, why don't you try photographing families around here? So I started out with that. And then I discovered adventure elopements just through Instagram. I followed this, it's like a Mecca Adventure Instead. They are like the people who discovered adventure elopements. And so I didn't realize there was a whole entire community like that. And I decided to jump into it because I love traveling. I've been traveling like my whole entire life, just going on random road trips. And part of it is fashion because I get to photograph people in beautiful dresses all day. And I truly just love watching people, like the connection. I love watching people in love, and I love like meeting all these new people and learning about their stories, and getting to discover new places. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's it.
Well, Spencer's been on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me.
Yeah, with Jordan.
Yeah.
Small world, small town. Awesome. That's awesome, Krista. We'll dive into that too a little bit. Megan, so Trailhead Marketing.
Yep, I'm Trailhead Marketing. First of all, Anto, I love you dearly. Krista, I love you dearly. Laura, we're going to get to know each other real well, I'm sure. I my background is actually agriculture and molecular biology. I went to Phillips Exeter Academy when I was 14, kind of fleeing a terrible family situation, and left early on academic ride, basically, and then went to Auburn University for ag and double majored in molecular biology. So my background is very scientific. I came back, again, fleeing a bad situation. It's the story of my life. Fled a bad situation, army, abuse, blah, blah, blah. Came back to Sheridan and started as a lab tech, moved up to method development doing radiochemistry. So it's radioactive chemistry for environmental testing, mines, whatnot. So I developed methods for strontium, thorium, lead, polonium, etc. But I'm a very forward-facing person and got tired of not having windows and being stuck in a lab and moved into sales. I, at this point, was married to my husband, Denny. And so I was essentially second income. We had 2 boys at this point. And I moved into sales, $24,000 a year as a little radio sales rep. And I loved it. I was good at it and did well. I moved up through onto Ramaco Carbon as the director of sales and marketing. Did well there, but the COVID hit. I don't know how else to say it. COVID hit, which hits the coal industry hard. I quit them before they quit me. Came back as director of sales as in digital marketing. And from there, my husband was actually murdered in April 23rd. He was killed up in Billings. And I had 2 little boys. I could no longer cover the whole market across the state of Wyoming. Cody, Sheridan, Buffalo, and Gillette. Moved to entrepreneurship and started Trailhead Marketing, where I do full service digital marketing. So I focus on foundational approach, website, social media, SEO, etc., and then onto strategic placement, customized to each customer.
Sorry, I'm writing all these notes. Sorry, because I'll let you. I want you all to have conversations, but like I'm writing all these notes down of all your guys' stories, and I'm like, what? So sorry. Yeah.
We all have a story.
We'll get into all of that, Megan. So thanks. Yeah, that's okay.
Anto, to go back to Anto. I mean, gosh, both of these ladies. Once when Denny was murdered, Antonia was there doing a shaman ritual at my house. What was it? A day after, and Krista photographed his funeral. So
that's awesome. Wow.
Good connection.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, yeah, well, this is all great stuff right here. So, Laura, last one here on the round table. Tell us a little bit about you and Peak Consulting.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and it's so great, the diversity. And I love that. So my ride to where I am, I was born in Wyoming, grew up in Tucson, went into education, I love kids, I didn't love working with kids. And so I ended up going into the sportswear industry. I worked for REI, helped them open up a store, first store in Arizona. And then through REI, I learned about Patagonia, which is a sportswear company. And I fell in love with them, with their product. I went and toured their corporate office and distribution down in Ventura. And I was like, I got to work for this company. And so I just kept getting to know people there, applied for a position, ended up being hired. And I initially just was in a support role for one of their directors. And then as I learned more about the company, they asked me to move into the human resources area. And so I did all the employee relations for the company. And if you know Patagonia at all, they have a really strong culture in terms of quality, really hardcore outdoors activities. And I oversaw the assessment process so that everybody who came in to get interviewed, we did a culture assessment before they were hired. And so I got to lead that, which was amazing. I was in my mid-20s, and it was an education like no other. And I got to work very closely with Melinda Chenard and also new Yvonne. And so I decided after working with them for about 5 years that I wanted to pursue some additional education. I moved to Seattle. I found a small private program called Leadership Institute of Seattle and started studying applied behavioral science. And so through that, Patagonia let me still work remotely. I oversaw the training and customer service for their retail stores. And then when I went to graduate school, I just got exposed to an amazing group of entrepreneurs and consultants. And so when I got through a year of graduate school, I got a position at an international consulting firm in Seattle, and they did a lot of work with mergers and acquisitions. And I didn't finish graduate school. I felt like I was just getting this incredible education. I mean, we were doing work with Microsoft and Starbucks and all these really cool, well-branded organizations. And so I did contract work with some of the consulting firms. I went out on my own, and I really went out on my own because I saw, after working for Patagonia and how they did things and how engaged their employees were, that other organizations weren't doing it. I was kind of shocked. Like, I grew up in that corporate setting, and then I went out and saw, wow, this is how people treat their employees, and the culture not being strong and not values-based. And so I just did a lot of organizational development, leadership development, a lot of executive coaching. And so 14 years ago, I decided to move to Sheridan. My family's here. My parents were aging, and I thought, it's good timing. And so I got here in 2007, and the bottom dropped out. I was still doing some work for Microsoft remotely, and I was going to start my practice here, and there was no work. And so for 2 years, I just got really creative. I actually started doing some photography, kind of started selling photography. I thought, I've got to do something in this gap and figure out what I want to do. And then I started getting connected into some businesses here and got asked to speak at a chamber luncheon. And I was like, wow, I think I could have a practice here. And so I just started developing my practice. I'm really fortunate. I have a handful of businesses that I work with here, and also Stacia Skredeberger works with me. And we go in and really help businesses, both for-profit and nonprofit, become higher performing. And when I say that, it's not just about the bottom line. How do we create a culture that people feel engaged, people want to come to work, and we do a great job in terms of carrying out our mission. So that's really the majority of the work we do. Most of my work is in Wyoming. I do some work in Montana, and then just recently got an internet company that I'm going to work with in rural Oregon. So that's kind of the combination of things.
This is awesome. Yeah, we might be here all day.
We might be here all day.
I had no idea about all these things. I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
I have so many comments. For one, I want to talk about culture, and you mentioned it. And I think, I hate to bring it up, but we're here as lady entrepreneurs. I think females come into it with a certain level of culture and understanding what motivates people to come to work, etc. I just made my first hire, which I'm so proud of. As a business owner, it's a big milestone. Krista just did the same thing.
Congratulations.
Yep. And so to hire somebody, but to say, okay, now you're coming to work for me, and I need you to do work for me. But establishing that culture. And I want it to be fun. I want it to be motivating, and I want her to make as much money as possible. And we call her the squirrel manager. I am the squirrel, and she manages me. So I basically hired my own boss. But to motivate her to help me make money so that she can make money and create that job and that culture and have fun. I mean, I want it to be fun when people come to work with me and we joke and we laugh and we're silly. We have all kinds of stuff going on.
Bonafide definitely has a specific work culture.
You guys
I always
definitely
tell
do.
all of my employees, this is going to be the hardest, funnest job you've ever had.
I love it.
And I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I am not going to do right alongside you or haven't done 5,000 times. But we just recently had a really cool video made at Sturgis in which a friend of mine really showed what the Bonafide culture is, and all the employees got to talk about what it meant, and it was really cool to watch. And so knowing that there are companies out there that specifically develop workplace culture is a revelation. I love that.
I think ladies, and Laura, you just touched on it. I think ladies probably are a little bit more in tune to that part of it. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was starting, I went to John Tucker. He's the CEO of VacuTech here in Sheridan. And I literally rode my horse to his house and told him to talk me out of this whole idea. Don't quit your 9-to-5 job. Don't start your own company. You just lost your husband and you're a single mom, blah, blah, blah. But I did, and we went through it, and he didn't have anything negative to say. But I think the best nugget of advice that he gave me for a new entrepreneur was to hire what I lack.
Yeah.
I am not an organized person. I'm a visionary. I'm big thinker. I have ideas and I can get started on 100 different things. And so hiring the squirrel manager, Meg, was probably the best thing I've done so far as a business owner.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I am not organized at all. So she, like I said before, was a valedictorian in high school. And I latched on to that after I heard about that because she was actually one of my brides, turned friend. But I heard that while I was photographing her while she was getting her hair done. And I was like, ooh.
You're the one.
I was like, I might use you later.
I need you.
Yeah, and she's talked about it before, like even before I shot her wedding. She's kind of mentioned that she wanted to get into that, and she's never done it before. So I felt it was important to give her a chance to get into it, and she's really good at it. I honestly haven't had time to look at everything that she's given me. I've had to be like, okay, Liz, like chill a little bit because the disorganization brain isn't comprehending everything right now. But yeah, I mean, like the culture thing, my whole thing is kindness. That is my biggest, I would say, part of my brand. Just by knowing the wedding industry, there's a lot of people out there who don't follow that path and are really in it just for the money aspect, coming from the photography industry. And I want people to actually feel listened to and cared about. And I want it to be like vice versa as well. So I also want to work with clients who care as much about me as well. So I really established that kindness matters in my business. So
I love the clarity because I think that is what is so critical of creating a culture. And what you said is about brand. And our brand it's the way we behave. It's how we show up. And the brand externally, really culture is a brand. You know, it's what we value. It's how we go about our day. It's how we treat people. And I think that when you have a strong brand and a strong culture, then you hire for that. And, you know, at times people will say, well, a culture needs to look this way. And I'm like, no, as an entrepreneur, you bring your values to your business. But I think that being intentional about it is so important. And being able to say, this is what my brand is or my culture. Yeah.
And sometimes that brand and culture is kind of, it's not necessarily traditional. I mean, sense of humor, having fun and kindness. I mean, these aren't, and this is probably where us ladies are probably bring it.
It's a different way what you're
Yeah.
talking about, that
Yep.
collaborative nature. I mean, you said that I want it to be as good for my employee as me.
Yep.
I mean, that from what I've seen is much more of how female entrepreneurs show up.
So, Anto, I was going to ask you, we've been talking about culture, and you've created such a culture and was such loyal. I mean, one thing I can always say about your people, just it's easily observable, and I say this as a customer and your friend, all of Heather, everyone, they're loyal to your brand and to your company. How do you think you've established that, and how have you?
You know, I have been in this industry a very long time. And part of the things that I experienced as a very young woman, I started apprenticing in Europe at 13, in a time in the culinary industry when there were no, and I mean no, female representatives of power. We had Julia Child, who was fabulous. I had an opportunity to meet her as a young woman. And, you know, sadly, the male pressures in the industry drove her to alcoholism. And also had the privilege of working with Martha Stewart at a very young age. And she was a driven and cold woman. She does not have a reputation for being a kind and equitable employer. And so as I moved my way up through the ranks of the culinary world and becoming a high-level executive chef, I just found myself wanting to establish to people that, you know, even in the chef world, you know, there's the concept of whatever the chef says goes. Everybody answers with yes, chef, and they can tell you to jump off the roof and you say yes, chef. But that if you were going to lead someone into battle or a very busy Friday night in one of the world's finest restaurants, you have to instill in people that this is something that you're doing together. This is a moment of, you know, everyone together is what makes it happen. While a 4-star Michelin restaurant is, of course, going to recognize the executive chef, it's his 25 people, garmeze, saucier, the dishwasher, the busboys that actually make that 4-star Michelin experience. And so establishing for me, and especially with Bonafide, the fact that, you know, Brian and I are self-made. Bonafide means to be real and genuine. And even on our bad days, we truly try and represent authenticity. And, you know, in the culinary industry, you spend more time with your people in the kitchen than you do with your own family. And so you do inherently become a type of family with all of your pluses and minuses, dysfunctions, and things that work. And so really just being in tune with my employees, asking them to go as hard as we do, and then in turn, rewarding them as well. You know, my staff will tell you that we take adventures and go camping. And, you know, if I'm going to ask you to be with me 16 hours today, we're going to feed you well. I'm going to check in on you. We're going to just make sure that everyone's having a good time and feels good about the product or the event or whatever it is that we are producing. And I think that came to me too from my family. My mom was also a very driven restaurant entrepreneur, and to this day, you know, almost 40 years later, I still have employees that were my parents that check in on me and cheerlead for Bonafide, and that I've always kind of questioned, like, how do you establish loyalty? You know, and it has to be reciprocal. People have to know that you're going to be there for them and they'll be there for you.
Laura, you'll probably have a super comment on that as for what you do, your consulting business as far as...
I love it. Like, you are so clear about who you are and how you show up. And I think that authenticity and loyalty, and that's something that we're seeing in so many cultures today, that there isn't that loyalty. But I really believe if you care about your people, you are collaborative, you know, just that, check in on them, see how they're doing, make sure that they are feeling good every day when they show up. You know, as part of what motivated me to go into this field is that we spend so much time at work, and you want people to really grow and be better from it. So when they go home, you know, we impact people's lives. They go home and then they're with their families, they're out in the community, all those things. And when they have a really meaningful, good work life, then it impacts the rest of their life. And so I think that's what I really
100%.
saw working for Patagonia. I mean, I incredible opportunity. And interestingly enough, the time that I was there, it was a female CEO. Yvonne Chenard did an article in Outdoor Magazine, and he said that he preferred to hire female executives. And I mean, people went crazy. They were upset that he said it. You know, this was in the 80s. But I grew up in a
nurturing. You don't need a nurturing boss.
No, isn't it crazy? And so that's what I grew up with. So you could imagine, then I get out in the world, business world, and I'm like, oh, like this is different.
Yep. And I really think using people to their strengths. I am not I am a purebred, thoroughbred salesperson. I just am. I'm not organized or anything, but I hired somebody who exceptionally was. Krista, my darling, we worked alongside each other in a certain capacity, and she is an artist brain of the most pure type, but fitting into that 9-to-5 box just didn't work.
No, not at all. That was always like my issue, even from when I got out of college. Like, even in college, I worked at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, I was not a morning person. I was a nighttime only person. And then in college, the 9-to-5 just really burnt me out when I started working for Lord & Taylor. And I was young, like I was 24. I'm only 30. So it's been like a short span of time with all that stuff happening. But yeah, I just learned at a young age that it wasn't for me and I needed to do something about it. And I never wanted to stay in Pennsylvania, like ever. Like, I wanted to get out of there since I was like 10. And I knew there was something bigger out there for me. And even my roommate in college, who was from California, kept telling me, you don't belong here. And I had no idea what that meant because I've never been out west before. So just doing that road trip with her really opened up my eyes of all like the possibilities. But yeah.
Yeah, I got to watch Krista go from trying to stuff herself into the 9-to-5 box, it not working.
Late all the time. Not showing up sometimes.
I'm taking a nap for the next 3 hours or so.
Yeah. Yep.
And then seeing her start her own company and something that fit her, which is wonderful. And I think that's why all of us are here is because we just didn't fit in the box and started our own deal. But we had to.
But Megan, I think what you said about both of you knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and we had a question to kind of think about that for ourselves. And I think a good, strong entrepreneur knows what they do well and knows what they don't do well, and then gets that support to be able to have others who do that well and really collaborate and appreciate what they bring. So you can do what you do best.
Yeah.
And then appreciate them.
Absolutely.
And create the culture. It all kind of feeds into itself. I'm
going to have you ladies. I'm looking for references because I am going in like 5 different directions right now. And I find myself like, I need a personal assistant. I need someone to be like, Anto, you need to write this blog and you need to do this thing. And I can't say I'm disorganized because you cannot be a caterer and be disorganized, but I don't necessarily have a business or an office mind. I've always been very product driven. What's the result? And so, finding someone, and like, I literally get anxiety when I have to sit down at my computer in my office and focus on creating invoices and things.
Oh my gosh.
That's the worst.
I'm starting to realize
all of us. Can I just point out the
Invoices.
trend? And Anto, you're on this too. Between you and Aaron and Laura and myself and Krista, we're all bobbing our heads desperately.
I feel it.
I mean, I'm organized enough to get my mission done, which is digital marketing. I can put together a strategy, blah, blah, blah. I can do all that. But then when it comes to sending the invoice,
Yeah.
I'd rather jump off a cliff.
Or even like, I always said to people, I can organize other people, but I can't organize myself because I write the timelines for the whole day and I have it like each time, like what we're doing. And it's so organized. And that's like the favorite thing of all my clients is that I actually, like, they don't have to worry. They walk in stress-free. That's like my motto. I don't want to stress. I don't want them to stress. But when it comes to me and then like the editing part, I'm like, oh, I don't have to think about this for 3 months. And I just need someone to have me on task the whole time or I won't do it.
All of us, I sure did, you did, had to hire my own boss.
Yeah.
Somebody to essentially keep me on task, and not in a bad way at all. It's just I have a certain brain, and it needs to, we got to focus the arrow to the target.
I want to go back
It's really
to
amazing as I'm growing in this year, like coming to 50 and going, wow, these are the things you need to know. And it's okay to delegate and ask someone else to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
delegation. I want to go to this question because I feel like all of you are going to have a great answer. How does someone go about, or how, let's keep this specific, how does a woman that wants to be an entrepreneur find out what her strengths are or what her weaknesses are?
Wow.
Anto, we're starting with you.
Okay. Well, one, I think that if you're going to be choosing to be a female entrepreneur, you need to choose something that suits your strengths. I mean, obviously there are people who completely do a 180 and do something totally different with their life other than what they have learned in college or professionally. For myself, when it comes to strengths or weaknesses, and this is a funny little inset, I had previously owned another restaurant and a couple of other businesses, but not until I got ready to start Bonafide did I actually reach out to the Wyoming Small Business Development Center. And she's retired now, but I tell people all the time, one of my most successful experiences was a woman named Susan Yerke. And you know, the SBDC, they really help small businesses with every little step from your business plan through whatever. And she and I laughed because I said, Susan, I've had some really successful companies, but I've never written a business plan. And so she walked me through all of the painful Excel spreadsheets and all the stuff. And it really helped me to recognize what my weaknesses were going forward of the business. I knew how to do food cost. I knew what it took to throw a party. I knew what it took to build a kitchen, but I didn't know small business taxes and employment rules and a million other things. And so, exposing yourself to a learning opportunity and being really open to say, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not.
I resonate so much with this. I can't even tell you. Okay, continue.
I also think a lot of it is following your gut as well, because there have been so many times where I've wanted to do this and then I have I'm really bad with self-doubt. That is like my biggest thing. Luckily I have Spencer who tells me like you can do it, but I think just going with your gut and your intuition, and there's a lot of photographers who are scared to kind of go into their business because they're worried that they're not good enough because there's so many different styles out there. And the one thing that I actually told someone who was nervous to go in full time was just imagine, and this is what I had to tell myself, was just imagine where would you be if you like started now? Like if you spent all that time worrying and of what it could be, where could you be by now? And so that has kind of kept me going as a business owner. Even when I felt like I wasn't getting any business, I was like, no, I got to keep trying, because what if like I give up? Like where would I be? So that was one thing that I had to try and tell other people in the past.
That's really good advice. Sometimes you just have to start.
Just
That's
do it.
often the hardest part.
Absolutely.
We
Just
get
do it.
ourselves like mired to the ground with these 80-pound concrete boots of,
Yeah.
so if I just take the first step, But then suddenly when you lift that 180-pound boot and you take that giant step forward, it's like, oh, hey, wait, I could run a marathon. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, and that of listening to yourself and trusting
Yeah.
yourself, because I think the great thing about being an entrepreneur is the market tells you very quickly of what you're good at and what you're not good at. I mean, your customer will tell you, and you get more business. I mean, I think really showing up, listening, paying attention. I think most entrepreneurs, and I think all of you have talked about it, there are things that you do well. There are things you're passionate about. And then it's a matter of getting out there and trial and error. And I think that's the risk piece. And Krista, you were talking about, I knew I didn't fit. Well, instead of staying in that box, you're like, no, I'm going to try something else.
And she did. I watched
Yeah.
her. It was awesome.
Scary.
Oh, absolutely. It always
It's absolutely
is.
terrifying.
Yeah.
I went from like not even being able to pay my bills, even with a 9-to-5. I was struggling. I was super depressed and everything. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I tried being a teacher. I tried doing graphic design, like with Megan.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel right. It was always, photography and working with people. And I needed that support, though, from the community. If I didn't have my friends and my family telling me, like, I could do it, it would have taken longer to finally jump off that ledge and do
Krista's
it.
performance and work showed up for it. I mean, it spoke for itself. She
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
showed
Well, and
up
you
and
have-
did it.
But you have people around you that are willing to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important.
Yeah.
It's weird, even as a successful woman in one realm, I'm currently branching off into women's motivational speaking. And I wrote a book in 2019 that's about to be a big darn thing. And here I am, like this confident chef. I know I can run this company, but I often wake up and say, like, am I making an impact? Like, women in industry can be hard too. So like from the motivational side and women in moto, it's been encouraging to have so many ladies across the country reach out to me on this journey and be like, I wake up every morning and I watch your story and find out where you're at, and you're pushing me to do my thing, do my exercise, do whatever it is. And I share with all of those ladies and with you and all these people that will listen, just because you are successful, whatever that definition is in the world, doesn't mean that you don't also wake up with self-doubt and be like, is this for real? Am I doing this?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
And I think
it okay? Am I meeting a bar? Does it have an impact? So you're always questioning, growing, expanding. And I've just been trying to be very present in like, this is me, and it'll resonate with who it resonates with, and it won't who it won't.
I love that.
Anto, I'm going to pop right on top of that. And I really do think that females, women, and this is kind of why I wanted to organize a specifically female panel, experience that in a very acute way. I think women internalize things in a different way that maybe men do. Even us, we're all probably super type A. God bless us all. But we probably internalize certain, are we good enough? Are we doing enough? Are we showing up in the space that we need to show up at the level that we need to show up at? Whereas a man can show up in a suit and we just assume he's good enough. Yeah. Women feel like we need to prove ourselves, I guess.
Yeah.
No, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, especially like I remember first starting out, when I interned at Polo, I was terrified because like it's Polo.
Yeah.
And I'm still in college, and there was a guy there who was more of like a tech person, but he knew a lot about cameras. Like he knew the ins and outs, and I'm still like learning. I know how to take a picture, but I don't know like all the specs all the time. And he just starts quizzing me and questioning and everything, and just to see if I know what I'm talking about, if I'm like right for the job. And I've gotten that so many times, even at Lord & Taylor. I was like hazed when I first got there because I was right out of college and I was starting as a manager, like lead photographer, and people didn't think I knew what I was doing. And I had 2 other male lead photographers on either side of me who were questioning me all the time. Do you know what you're doing? And I had to prove myself 10 times harder to them.
Didn't you want to say to them, I'm here?
Right? I had the one guy, which is like we're friends now, but I really didn't like him in the beginning. He handed me a paintbrush because you had to use it to brush stuff like the dust off of like shoes and everything to take the product photography. And I had a painting degree, and it was like a Home Depot paintbrush. And he's like, do you know how to use this? And I was like, well, considering I have a degree in painting. But it's just like stuff like that where, you know.
I recently, and I don't want to, I am thrilled about this client, and I don't want to embarrass him because I told him to
Throw him
listen
under
to
the bus. No, just kidding.
It's Sweet Joey at Joey's Fly Fishing. So shout out to that organization, which is phenomenal. But recently, we had a call, and I brought in a male partner in my business, and he assumed that I had been hired by the man.
Did you set him straight?
Yeah, we clarified, and it wasn't a rude comment. He wasn't it's how people's brains work. They assume that, and I said, no, I'm the owner of the company. But things like that, it's as a female, there are particular challenges. There just are. And women are perfectly capable. We're equal but different, but there are particular challenges as female business owners. Anto, what's your comment on that? Because you're the most powerhouse lady I know.
Well, thank you. That's tremendously flattering. I working on learning to accept compliments. The culinary industry is the oldest male-driven centric industry that there is. And from the time I was a very young woman, I have been hazed, abused, sexually harassed. I think I may have once told you the story about how these guys locked me in a steam kettle overnight because they were trying to get me to go home from apprenticing where I was. But I've always just sort of met it with a little bit of resilience. I'm definitely a Leo and a warrior. And it's like,
you're a fire sign. I'm an Aries.
I know that I belong in this industry. And I've known since I was young that I had talent. And it was really a matter of like figuring out how you navigate that place as a woman. And then, of course, I'm of petite stature. I tell people I'm little, but I'm strong. And so making sure that people know that I'm here to work. I'm here to establish what I'm doing with my talent, creating those things, and just really against the male patriarchy. It's like, no, I'm not going to BJ my way to the top. And that's a terrible thing to have to say, but it's a real like, oh, well, if you'd like the sous chef position, you could meet me in my office at 4.
Gross.
And it's like,
awful.
FYI, I'm really good with knives. Yeah.
But that resilience.
This method,
Laura, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
My tongue.
That I love the resilience when you talk about that. I think that you really have to have that as a female. Yeah. And when I got into consulting, I worked in banking first. They put me into banking. So it was all men in suits. And I come in, I'm like 30 years old, and they look at me. I mean, it's like, I'm going to eat you alive. Yep. And I just really had to show up and be strong. I used a sense of humor, though, and I think that helped me a lot. But it was interesting in Seattle, and I ended up doing a lot of work in technology, and that kind of went away for me. I didn't think much about it. I was very well accepted. I did high-level executive coaching, most with men, and so it was a real interesting thing to come here as an entrepreneur and back to Wyoming, and I just found that it was different culturally. And I had to walk a much different line, and I felt in some ways kind of starting over of how I had to show up. And
I totally resonate with that, because Wyoming is a whole different bag of tricks for, I love Western culture and all the things that we have, but as women entrepreneurs and leaders, certain people in the community tend to look at you like, oh, I have tattoos and I don't always have the most ladylike demeanor. And sometimes it comes across, especially in Wyoming, as, brazen, or she's too sassy for that, or whatever. But then the ones who like it, years later now, Greg Von Krozik is my very favorite. He was the city attorney when I started Bonafide, and he and I did not get off on a good foot. And now he's my personal attorney. He loves that I have lots of fire. He loves that I'm going to stand up for, women in business and mobile vending and all the stuff that's happening in Wyoming. And it was really just a way of navigating into letting people see you for who you are in business.
I think women, I truly do, and I've experienced this myself, is I'm too much. I'm too loud. I'm too obnoxious, whatever. And go find less then.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
I am what I am, and I'm tired of not being what I am. It is what it is. So I think women really need to embrace that. I think women show up differently. We have a different energy, different presence, different methodical way of doing things. Different. I don't know. We're just different. We are different.
I think you have to be sure of yourself.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I struggled with. I was always a very timid person, still kind of am in some situations. But as soon as I'm in my zone, it's like I've had people see me as the person I am outside of work and then working, and they're like, what? who are you? And I'm like, oh, I just turn on the, But it's interesting when you were talking about Patagonia, because I actually applied for outdoor research as a photographer in Seattle. And it was me up against another guy. And I didn't get the job and the guy did. And I was like heartbroken, because that was where the industry I wanted to go into was adventure photography, because, I didn't know that there was the wedding side of it yet.
Yeah.
But when I started doing my business, so Spencer has his business, and we went to this giant outdoor retailer in Denver, and they were there. And I went up to them and I just said hi. And she was like startled that I was even there. And she's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, well, he owns a business and I own a business now. And I told them about it. And the guy that they hired was there too. And it was so weird. They all just like hid from me. But it was just like, it's like one of those things where, when people don't see your true potential, it makes you work harder to show that to others.
But I think that's where ladies are at. I really do.
Yeah.
I think there is a certain, and I really do think that there is a certain extra level of energy that you have to put in as a female to show up.
And that ends up serving you.
Yeah.
I think it really does. And that was something in coming to Wyoming. I was blown away by the women here in leadership, and also so collaborative. I mean, I've had to work a little bit harder, but because of that, they show up, and their products and services just higher quality. And for me, the reason I got into a lot of organizations here were introductions through women. And I just feel so grateful to the women in this community, because they gave me the platform. And then once people got to know me, they're like, oh, gosh, you have a lot to offer. But I had a hard time getting in the door.
Yep. And I'm going to piggyback right on the word collaborative. So I'm in digital marketing. I'm in marketing. And I am always trying to work collaboratively instead of competitively. And it's served me well. And I honestly, going back, keeping the theme, I think it's kind of a female trait to not necessarily work against somebody, to work with people. So I'm working with several of the marketing, Erin, you and I are going to talk, working with other marketers locally and within the region, and it's served me well. It's served them well, but more importantly, my business, it's served my clients well.
Yeah.
And so to work collaboratively and to get those platforms, as you said, and a lot of it has been, I mean, gosh bless, we came here because I called Dixie Johnson, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, just working with people. And I think that's one of the strengths that oftentimes women have that men probably do too, but in a different way.
Yeah, women show up more in that way, and
Mm-hmm.
I see them use that more in business.
And we support each other a lot too.
Yeah.
I think it's super important in that you have something to learn from your competitor.
Or can use, or
Yeah, exactly.
combine strengths.
I want to hear all your guys' answers about why is it in the tech industry, when you're working in the tech industry and the banking industry on the West Coast, that they accepted the consulting, right? And I had a thought of, was it they knew these companies you were working for are big successful companies, and they're going to put everything aside and say, hey, if we're going to be successful, we're going to listen to you. And I wonder, was that kind of the switch of, you come to small town Wyoming and, these business owners are like, well, I've been business and for 40 years, why do I need to change something? I want to hear why we think that
Difference.
That difference there. Yeah. Don't want you to put you on the spot, but
it's a great question.
Yeah.
I think,
because stereotypically, why you think of this, like most people would maybe think stereotypically, those, now there are situations in big companies. Yeah.
Well, I think to be successful, you really do need to be open to others taking a look, evaluation. But it costs money. And so I think for the larger organizations, they were willing to invest in that way and saw the value. And it was kind of the norm there. And when I came here, what I realized is people were used to, quote, training, where you came in and you taught a subject. And so I think to a certain degree it hadn't evolved into the way that some of those larger organizations worked. And so when I got here and I'd talk about executive coaching, people didn't understand it.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, what are you going to give me? And so it was probably about 6 years. I've been here for 13 years. It was probably, I shouldn't even say 6, probably 8 years into it. People started understanding executive coaching and were more open to it. So at least you could start out and do a little bit of that. And then they saw the value and it's like, wow. And then they'd talk about it, or you do more in across the business. So I think it maybe was just not familiar with it. Like some of the larger organizations, like you said, when you're working with Fortune 500 companies.
I recently did a sales consultation training, essentially. I was brought over to South Dakota to train a broadcasting company to train digital marketing. So I had a team of salespeople, and they're working with clients. But very similar, these people, they saw that a client or a consultant was coming in, rolled their eyes. I said, I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint. I'm not going to train you into the ground. We're going to do we got to get you up to speed, but then we're going to do one-on-ones. I'll work with you, get to know you specifically as an individual, your strengths, weaknesses. There's no shame in it. And then go out in the field with you, and we'll do the real deal with you and then review. And it worked out well. The whole team, they didn't want to touch digital marketing with a 10-foot pole, but I've got all the sales team, and they all call me all the time, and it's great. I mean, I welcome it. It's wonderful, but yeah, a different model of consultation for sure.
Yeah.
Krista, Antonia, anything to add on that one? I know that's kind of niche for Megan and Laura there, but...
Not from a consulting point. I was thinking, the collaboration point of just for us and Bonafide's reputation of welcoming other food vendors into our kitchen, giving people advice about how to be a more successful mobile vendor, caterer, farmer's market producer, just building that bigger table and not a higher fence. People often ask me, Anto, how come you're so, gosh, you just give your knowledge to these people. And I feel like it's a gift. Nobody gave me that knowledge. I had to learn it the hard knocks way. And I always said, if I could use my little bit of experience to help someone else expand their experience, because they're going to put their signature on it. Competition makes us stronger, not less than. And when you tell people you see someone else doing well, and it makes you feel that little like, oh, I can do that, or I can drive harder. The intrinsic nature is whatever you're doing, photography, digital marketing, whatever, you're always going to put your personal energy into that. So it is your individual signature. But together...
Can I pause you and so you can explain a little bit about your community kitchen and how you're helping the other food trucks in town?
Yes.
So you're she's training and helping her direct competition.
Yeah, that's
awesome. We started Bonafide with this little teeny tiny kitchen, and I mean like 12 by 16. And we did our first year rodeo out of this little baby space, and it did not have enough refrigeration. So here we are with all this food for the WYO rodeo, and I reached out to all these people that I knew, and the lovely ladies at the co-op were like, sure, you can use our fridge, and the ladies at the school district were like, sure, you can use our fridge. And I said to myself then, that year, if I can ever afford to grow this company to a point where we can make a kitchen for everyone, because so much of deciding to get into a food-based business is extremely cost prohibitive. To build a commercial level kitchen, just the most basics, cost 10 grand. And that's a huge investment for people. And so when the opportunity came for us to buy the property where Community Commissary is, the old Fry Construction building, it was a weird building. Brian and I had a vision, and I said, I want this to be a space where everyone can use, where they can bounce creative ideas off of, where you can just test something. And so as I'm voicing these things, I had been asked that year to speak at the Fab Women's Conference, and I was terrified. For all of my speaking ability, standing up in front of roomfuls of women was like, oh God. And I had some great local mentors like Shelly Kinnison and Bonnie Gregory and Amy from Civic, who were like, Anto, you got this. And behind my back, they had helped me. One of the big things for the commissary kitchen was enough refrigeration space. And walk-in fridges are very, very spendy. And these ladies helped us to create a GoFundMe. I didn't realize that this was happening. Catherine Law from Only Co. was also a huge contributor to that. And these ladies raised $10,000 to help buy this walk-in so that we could have this for our community. So the kids from Daily Grind produce all of their burritos and baked goods at the commissary. Maxwell Foster, who had Fired Up Food Truck. There's a new food truck coming to Sheridan that's going to be doing cheese curds and things. And just by being willing to help, more and more people, the health inspector told these new people, if you need to know something, ask Anto. She's going to share with you. And I just look at it like, if you have to learn the hard way and it's going to cost you, $5 or $5,000, and someone else can give you that knowledge, that little leg up, a space to have a start, to even see if this is for you, was just a dream to be able to say, hey, maybe you make the best apricot bread ever, but you don't know if you can make 200 apricot breads, and you need a place to test that out. And so Community Commissary exists for that purpose, so that anyone interested in building food service can do that.
Yeah, and so that's that collaboration as opposed to competition.
Yeah.
I love
which
that.
I think is a lady. I really do.
I love seeing the success of others. I think there's nothing more rewarding than getting in and seeing someone else be successful.
That you got to put that light in them.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing, because like I said, there's so many people who follow me on like these social media platforms I've never met in my life. And then just like them telling me, you inspire me. And I'm like, I do. But at the same time, like, okay, well, go for it. Like, I like just telling them and giving them like the education, because like what Anto said, like you put your own signature on everything.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to be exactly like you. Someone could copy off an idea, but they're still going to put us like, you know, a different twist onto it. So I think it's just super important.
One,
Go ahead. Sorry.
and client success as well. I mean, I'm very client based. Laura, you probably are too. Krista, you are too. Anto, people buy burritos from you and they think they're delicious. But
Love.
we just from a client standpoint and seeing their success is unbelievably rewarding. Not to be dark, but my husband was murdered. I had to plan a funeral. It turned into a conversation. One of my clients is the funeral home. We've increased their client base by about 50%, and I can show them that trackability. I mean, this is any situation. We can turn it into a success. So just seeing just how you can help people in any way, and sometimes it's a little bit a preposterous situation, but just go with it.
Well, and the thing that stands out for me that I do think sets women entrepreneurs apart is that wanting to help. I mean, everybody's used that word and talked about it here. And I think when we look at women in business, we also have to take such care, because oftentimes you come last and you have to make sure there's a balance there. And I think that's when we talk about strengths and weaknesses in that way, I think it's something I see pretty consistently with women entrepreneurs. And just like, how do I make sure I feed myself so I have enough to be able to give much as you give?
Big deal. Yeah. I mean, I'm now
I have a tiny something to put into that maybe you guys have some feedback. So of course everybody calls me the hardest working woman alive, right? Anto's always doing all this stuff, which I just considered normal. And now here I am out here on this motorcycle journey. And very interestingly, to the 75 positive, like, you're inspiring me, this is so empowering, I really admire that you're doing this, you also have this small percentage of the haters who are like, oh, you guys were struggling so hard through 2020 last year. Must be nice to take a month-long vacation.
Wow.
Those people have no background about why I'm out here, how I'm out here,
Go ask themselves.
how I'm paying for it. But it seems like when you get to a certain level of success, even if your reputation is to be helpful, inspiring, driven, you get this negative impact too, where people are feeling resentment towards your growth or expansion. And how do you ladies deal with that, or have you had to deal with that?
I'm going to point this one to Krista, because I've seen, I mean, going back to breaking out of the cage of the 9 to 5.
Oh, you've seen people. Yeah, I've definitely have had it must be nice to take photos for a living, and because people think that, you know, snapping a picture is so easy. And, you know, there are people who are hobbyists that, and I support those people as well, because I think that it's great that they want to learn. But it also does kind of hinder the people who are doing it as a full-time living, because it is easy to take a picture. Like, anyone can take a picture. You can use your cell phone to take a picture. But the
We're going to put Krista's work on the website, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But just the aspect of, I don't know, when people say that to me, I just kind of nod my head and I'm like, like, just, yeah, sure, it's really easy. And then I guess that's what I like to do in my platforms, is really show people what I'm doing. So I like all the traveling and just the editing part that people don't think about after taking the photos. Photography is 5% taking photos, 95% editing, and all the marketing and everything else. And I mean, I don't know. It's just like, go ahead and try it for yourself kind of thing.
Yeah.
And see what you can do. And if they can figure it out, then that's awesome. But a lot of people who see me behind the scenes are like, I have absolutely no idea like what you're doing. And even like I go to therapy, my therapist, I was telling her about, you know, all this editing I have. And she's like, I had absolutely no idea that all of that went into photography. And I was like, yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And we get, you know, at weddings, we get the uncles coming up to us who, you know, say, oh, must be nice. Like, that's what I hear the most. But you just got to shake it off, because as long as, you know, I think it's important that as long as you see your growth and other people see, there are other people who see what you're doing, it kind of keeps you on that path of not listening to those people putting you down the whole time.
And then
like without having to tell people about all of the backstory and hardship that has driven me to this point of positivity, I keep looking for that optimal reply to, you know, you don't know all the reasons why I'm out here. But I do anything and everything I do in my life at this point with a great deal of thought and investment and looking at the stuff. You know, I recently just had a client reach out to me who was like, oh, I see now why you couldn't do our party before Thanksgiving, because you're out having a vacation.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, rude, but okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like,
Isn't that
this is not a
interesting?
vacation. I'm technically working. I'm working on a second book. I'm working on myself. I'm working on a lot of things, and it's work. And having people respect or resonate with that, you know, there's always that little hint of, like I said, resentment or jealousy from people who are not sharing.
I get a lot from, once I quit the 9-to-5, they pretty much just thought that I was, again, my husband was murdered. I got a tremendous generosity from the community, but I'm not living off of that. So I'm raising a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, managing a 35-acre farm, and trying to build a business. It's a lot of work. It's not that I'm not working. I'm working all day, every day.
Yeah, people don't see the behind the scenes. Like I bought a Volkswagen bus, and I am working on making that into something that I can travel in so that I can sleep in it. I don't have to spend money on hotels, and that's going to be part of my brand as well eventually. But no one knows that I'm doing that. No one knows that I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about with
ripping
engines.
the seats out.
And like, and it's not only that. It's, you know, everyone has stuff that happens to them like in their personal lives outside of their work, and especially as a business owner. You know, we're always going, and it's like as soon as we take a break, people are like, what are you doing? At least that's how I feel. Or like if I don't answer someone back for a whole day, I feel guilty because I could have, but I also needed to just kind of collect myself again so I have energy. Like, you know,
it's a
I mean, you've given me advice, Megan, before. You've seen me like I'm so exhausted, and
just
but that's where I think you have to have your supporters. Because the more successful you get and are able to do the things you're doing, and good for you for doing it. I think it's fabulous. I think you have to have those people that are going to have your back and say, no, you're doing the right thing. Because it's really easy it's a slippery slope to start taking those things in, that negative feedback, and people that are jealous or envious, whatever. I think you can't give it too much energy. And then you just try and put your focus over with those people that are your cheerleaders and love what you're doing and love who you are. And that is
I'm
easier
lucky to have
said.
good cheerleaders, so they do take away from the naysayers. It's a good balance.
So if we were speaking to new lady entrepreneurs, people who are hoping to get into the space, Laura, you're our consultant. How would we find those cheerleaders? I met you, thank goodness Bobby put me right at your table, and then I spoke to Dixie, the CEO of the chamber, and she put you in touch for this podcast. How would you find that if you don't have that support built in? A lot of people don't. I don't.
I think you have to seek it out.
I agree.
And, I think there's so many great women in this community. Stacia Skredeberg, who works with me, I remember she just asked me to lunch and said, "Can I pick your brain?" And this was probably 10 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to share how to be successful in this business. And I think just taking the risk to ask. And some people are going to love to share and others aren't. And if they don't, it's like, okay, thank you. And for those that do, of really surrounding yourself in that way. But Dixie at the Chamber, I think, is amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah. But I usually go to other women who are successful because I believe that they're successful because they surround themselves with great people.
I totally agree. I completely agree. I don't have family support or any support. But I've had to build it.
Yeah.
And I have. And here we are. There's a lot of support to be had. You do have to put yourself out there to take it.
Yeah. I think being authentic is important because people want to actually know who you are and not, just a fake face for your business. That's one thing that always kind of bothers me is when I can tell that people are putting on like a fake kind of front of who they really are, and then you get to know them and it's like, oh, you're not this person that came across this way.
Right.
One person who I really, really look up to, and I will forever tell her this, even though she's told me we're on the same level as Cassie Madden, and she's a wedding photographer here in Sheridan, and she's just amazing. But she actually was one of my biggest supporters when I got started. I second shot with her at a wedding, and ever since I was like smitten with her. But she really helped me. She was like always like, "Krista, these are incredible." And just hearing that from someone that you look up to is super, super important because it kept me going when I'm like, I put my stuff in, I tried to get into Rocky Mountain Bride magazine and they denied me because my stuff was like too dark apparently for their style. And I went to her and I was like, "Do you think I have another chance?" And she's like, "Absolutely." Like, and she's been in there all the time. Like they know her personally. So I think that just kind of latching on to almost like a mentor is important as well. So yeah.
Culture, mentor, collaboration. I mean, and I think these
You're
are
saying authenticity. That is
authenticity.
one of the biggest thing.
And I truly do think these are kind of the ladies' strengths. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, as far as us ladies charging in the business world on our own, I think these are some of our strengths as entrepreneurs.
Love it. I'm good. Okay. Great stopping point. And I'm glad this has been great because I'm just sitting here like, okay, we need to ask this question. Then you guys go right into that topic. I'm like, I don't need to ask it. I don't need to stop the flow. That was all wonderful.
You're the moderator.
We're just mind reading, which is another great characteristic.
One of the things about a podcast that I tell people is if they're talking, it's easy for me because I just get to listen and then I just keep letting them talk. Like I don't need to do anything. I just want to say this has been awesome. I'm a high school football coach, and we're heading out to state, so like in the realms of business, I mean, this is it. Like, and you guys, all you ladies have been hitting on some things that's like, man, like we tell our boys this all the time, there's culture, there's, I just got lists over here, and it's awesome to hear that from you all because it's like, man, this, it's not fake, this isn't fake stuff that we're selling to you guys, and, so anyways, just want to say that's super cool that like this is unprompted, didn't give any of you ladies any of that stuff. So, to finish out, I would like everyone this is like your plug time. So, kind of upcoming projects or things you guys have been proud of, so Anton, will have you start, you finished a book, you've got another book, maybe what can people expect about the food truck? Are we going to see it back on the street? And so we'll start on the Google Meets, and this is kind of how we'll end out. We'll go through the room here.
First, I would like to say thank you both to Aaron and GoBeWYO and to Megan for putting this panel together. This has been such a fun morning. And this super quick recap of things. Biggest question in Sheridan: when will Bonafide return to the street? Sadly, we will probably never be a daily street service business again. But we will be out for Sheridan Winter WYO Rodeo. We are talking about a potential for a brick and mortar. There are some things that could be coming with that. Working with my publisher right now, and you guys will be seeing a first book debut, hopefully coming in February. Apparently, that's when you launch if you want to get onto the New York Times bestseller list. Even Star Moto Evangelist is going to keep making her way around the country. I'm riding all 50 states by 50 for myself, and also in representation for missing, murdered, and Indigenous women. Bonafide is becoming a lifestyle brand. So if real, authentic, genuine, and food love resonates with you, follow along. Bonafide Food Love, Even Star Moto Evangelist. It's a BAM life. I'm really excited for all the opportunities that are coming, and just paying witness to Sheridan. Oh, and last shout out, next time you'll be able to get Bonafide, buy a ticket to the Winter Equestrian Ball. It's going to be off the chain this year, December 4th.
Antone, when is the Winter WYO Rodeo if people don't know, or if they're traveling through Sheridan and the ball? What are those dates?
Saturday, December 4th. It's going to be held up at the fairgrounds. Donna from Little Willow Traders is going to turn the fairgrounds into a winter wonderland, and the fabulous ladies from the Sheridan Equestrian Club and all of their committees. It's just a tremendous fundraiser for an amazing thing in our community, and that is the polo and the equestrian fields, where so many activities happen: weddings, hot air balloons, all the good stuff.
Awesome. Make sure you follow her. What's your personal one, and then what's the Bonafide food?
Bonafide Food Love is the food truck. Even Star Moto Evangelist is my moto journey. And It's a BAM Life is kind of like my personal, here's all the other things. I have to have 3 pages to keep it straight.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, so February 2022 is the book release. Make sure you look for it and get it so it can be on the New York Times best-selling list. So awesome. And then the Winter WYO Rodeo Bonafide will be out there. And then if you get a ticket to the ball December 4th, you can get a catered food from Bonafide Food Truck. So awesome. Thanks, Antone. Krista, anything big? Or I had this, so it doesn't necessarily have to be projects or anything like that, but maybe like your biggest success that you've had so far as your own personal, and it could be personal or professional. Yeah. And if someone else wants to go while Krista thinks, that's fine too.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Or just your self-plug there. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's nice meeting you and Laura and Anto. I've seen you. I've met you before. And Megan, thank you for inviting me as well. My biggest project is the bus that I brought up. So I bought this 1971 Volkswagen bus. It's completely a mess right now, but that is something that I want to have for 2022 for weddings. My goal with it is to not only live in it and, well, not full time, but to travel in it, but I want to utilize it in weddings. Use it as like a photo booth that people can rent out, or even just as like a prop for photos, because I have a lot of clients who are super adventurous and want that extra touch. My main vision is going to Yosemite and having it on the road there and just photographing a couple as like the introduction of it. I'll be painting thistles up it, like it'll be lime green with white thistles. It's a pop-up. Her name is Irene, Irene Green. I have like a whole plan for her. Like I said, Spencer is teaching me how to rebuild an engine, which I have never done in my life, and redo everything. So that is the biggest project for 2022, and I'm hoping for the summer that I can debut that.
How can people find you?
Oh, for
photography personally?
Yeah.
Yep.
For Instagram, it's Thistle and Tulle Photography, same on Facebook and everything else. But yeah, the biggest growth is really, my goal is to just be traveling full time. I eventually want to do just adventure elopements and kind of move away from bigger weddings. But yeah, and I want to go to Iceland. That is another goal.
I love it.
An elopement to Iceland.
Elope.
Yeah, elope
right?
to Iceland. There
Yeah.
you go. Awesome. Megan, you were the I'm trying to think of the word here, the ringleader here, bringing this all together. So, but how can people find you, and what's kind of your upcoming projects for you?
Sure. So you can find me at www.trailheadmarketingllc.com. Write that down. But also Trailhead Marketing LLC at Instagram and on Facebook. It all pops up. But my biggest adventure is I have clients from coast to coast, literally from Seattle to Boston. I've got them all over the country, and we're growing quickly. But I'd like to focus primarily locally. I like working locally. I want to work locally with business owners here, and also clientele here is my goal, is my focus. Definitely Sheridan, Wyoming focused, regionally focused. Mm-hmm. But really it's bringing success for our clients. We want to see your growth, manage expectations, see an ROI, see the KPI, key point indicators, that actually moves your needles to success with marketing. And we have anything that you've ever seen online, we can do it. We again, I mentioned it earlier, we focus foundationally, your website, et cetera. But truly it's custom marketing strategy for you.
Awesome. And lastly, Laura.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to be able to meet you two, being down the hall from you. And also thank you, Megan, for inviting me. And it's wonderful to hear your stories. And it's inspiring for me always. I can be found just by doing a search on Peak Consulting in Sheridan. Two really cool projects that we're working on right now. We're doing a community needs assessment for our police department. Chief Koltiska, who's new to the role, asked us to come in and help them in their strategic planning process, and we're doing small groups where I'm getting feedback in terms of what's really going well, where there are gaps, where can we improve, and also just how do we make this community a higher quality of living. It's such a great place to live, but we have to keep tending to it. So that's been a really fun project. If you're interested in giving feedback, please look up Peak Consulting, give me a call or shoot me an email. And then a big pitch for tonight, because it's Impact 307's pitch night. And I've been working with them over the last several years as a judge. And we have some really cool businesses that are presenting this evening at the WYO Theater. And it's about entrepreneurs. And 2 female entrepreneurs will be pitching, and then 3 additional businesses.
Wow, awesome. I didn't know you were a judge on that. That's awesome. I've
been doing that for, since the inception of it, and it's a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great little program for, seed money and things like that for entrepreneurs. Yeah. We've had Chief Koltiska in here before with Captain Ringley, so that's interesting. I didn't know that. So now I can pop on over and bug you a little bit about what we think about it. No, they were great. And so that's fantastic. Well, thank you all for coming in. Megan, again, thanks for setting this up.
Yeah. Thank you all, ladies, for coming in. The stories that we all have, we all need to grab some coffee or a beer or something. And
we'll put Wild Rodeo whiskey under the bus. We were all kind of like, let's take some shots a little bit before, and Gregor, the studio is empty, so I'll call Gregor out real quick. He usually gives us some whiskey in here, and we're empty. So, anyways, well, if you ladies want to come back in, or we want to get some other ladies in, that'd be great. If you're a judge of Impact 307, maybe we could have those entrepreneurs in here, maybe give a pitch too. That'd be kind of fun. I need to reach, that's been on my mind. That's on me. I need to reach out to Impact 307 and Scott Randall. I've met him before. That's on me. But yeah, thank you guys for jumping on and coming into the studio. Antone, thanks for calling in from Texas. Have fun. You are working.
Absolutely.
Tell those haters they don't know you. So
have a great time.
And we'll hit the music here.
We love you all. Thank you.